Hello, my name is Andre Veskimeister and I'm the founder of Parcel Lockers Central. And today I have really big honor to have here Alan Barrie from City of London, from the very heart of the Parcel Locker battlefield today. Hi Alan, how are you doing?
Hi, Andre. Good to speak to you.
Great to have you here, and let's go to directly to the point. You are now chairing the newborn Parcel Locker network in London, and later on in England wider YEEP network. Tell me about where are you now, and what's your plan with the network in upcoming years?
Yes, it's pretty exciting. We just launched the new network in London in October, and we already have nearly 250 lockers locations on the ground. So a very fast start, and we'll have a good number more by Christmas. And it's our plan to get 1,000 on the ground by the end of Q2 next year, which will be the fastest initial rollout of any open locker network undertaken in London. And the plans go beyond that. We're working on big plans to take it throughout the rest of the UK. And that's ambitious. It will require some good funding, a good business model, but the journey has started.
Yeah, and seems you are not alone with that plan. There are several players conquering the island with their parcel lockers, starting from InPost, ending with Royal Mail. How do you feel in inside this kind of competition?
Well, it's a great opportunity. I mean, the UK is supposed to be one of the most sophisticated e-commerce markets in the world, and certainly in Europe. Yet, it's actually quite traditional when it comes to the last mile and delivery side of it. So 90+% of all parcels are delivered to the door. It's very much a home delivery network, and that's 32 million locations that have to be served, or in London, 3.5 million addresses that have to be served. So it's quite a task, it's quite a demanding task, and it takes up a lot of resources. So there seems to be a movement on now to take out of home seriously, and there are a number of people working on that with different characteristics. And it'll be very interesting to actually have a crystal ball and to work out where the industry is in 3, 5, and 10 years' time. But I think it's going to look very, very different for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and what makes you different? As far as I know, you are somehow very deeply connected with the city municipality in a sense that this is a planned attempt to organize out-of-home delivery in London.
Yes, it's really about our origins. Our origins came from a conversation on a Friday night in a pub in London, where the Transport for London team, the commercial team, were sitting talking about their successes, and they've been very successful in intervening and managing buses, trains, cars, congestion zones, etc. But the one thing that they weren't in control of was vans, small vehicles, which were running around London and seemed to be growing in numbers. And it was the one area that seemed to be, in their view, out of control in London. But revealingly, they were just as concerned about congestion. So whether vehicles are switched to electric is only half the answer to them. It's about having less vehicles or less miles on the road. And they wondered whether they should intervene by regulating the parcels industry, which was growing very rapidly, or whether they should speak to the industry and see if there was a better way of delivering to 3.5 million places in London, or was that the only way they could do it? So that was the origin. It was that they brought me in for 6 months to work with them and to talk to the industry, and we took it from there. We were going to grow it within Transport for London, but then COVID came along and nearly killed the whole thing. So we had to move quite quickly at that point and find some alternative funding because TfL was Transport for London was in serious trouble at that stage with no customers, no revenue. And we set up, at their request, our own business. And that became Delivering London, which has now been launched with the YEEP brand for UK-wide growth. And so our origins are very much around the city perspective about the need to find better ways of delivering more and more parcels using less road miles. And that's the simple equation that you have to find. It's a good logistical challenge.
It is indeed. It is indeed, and you are an open agnostic network. You are open for every carrier and service provider, and that's why this is also very sort of sustainable model for the big city like London is.
Yes, we are. We felt that we felt that to get close to the people, we did a lot of customer research with some great help from some very good analysts, and YouGov BCG actually helped us with some of our analysis, and we had great support from other locker companies. InPost and Quadient helped us at that stage. John Lewis, the retailer, the Post Office Network helped us at in those early stages to do our research. And from that research, it was quite clear that there was a demand and there was a market potentially out there, but it meant that we had to be very careful about thinking through convenience, because the consumer's idea of convenience, through the many hundreds of interviews that we did, the consumer's idea of convenience had to be taken very, very seriously. So it meant that the proximity that we were talking about was something that had been not actually contemplated beforehand. We felt that London, if it was to be done properly, needed 9,000 or 10,000 locations, not a few hundred. And that's what we're looking at, a proximity of most people don't want to walk further than 200 or 300 meters to a locker bank. They have to walk there and back. So it needs to be a short journey. It needs to be close to where they live, where they work, where they already go. They don't want to do a special journey. They just want it to fit in with their lives. And that's the analysis we did, and that's the business model that we're pushing now and testing in reality.
Yeah, and there's one more thing to be considered in that end-to-end chain, and this is the e-commerce checkout options for the customer. Because we both, I think, believe that parcel locker delivery is more sustainable way of deliver parcels, but customers should have the ability to choose exactly the more sustainable delivery method also by themselves, and so influence also from their perspective to the sustainability.
Yes, they could. And it's interesting. I got taught a very early lesson speaking to some of the behavioral scientists at Ogilvy, actually one of the biggest marketing companies in the world, never mind the UK. And they've got a very sophisticated behavioral team. And they said, don't just assume that because you put something green on the table that people are going to pick it up. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, if you offer a green option, probably about a third of the people looking at those options will say, I am going to do this because it is green. The other 2/3 are far more selfish in their motivations, and they will need something else to make them do it. Yeah, they like the idea of green, but it needs to be either more convenient or cost less or better for them in some other way, and they're not just going to do it because it's green. So green is important, but you've got to think beyond green if you're going to make the behavioral change and get people to transition from sitting in at home waiting for something, or actually using a pickup point or drop-off point properly that's very nearby their home.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and this is, you touched a very good point, and this is the pricing of the delivery. So from the process point of view, to deliver to the parcel lockers where you have consolidation and not home delivery, it is cheaper from the carrier perspective because you are sharing the cost with the client. client has to pick up the parcel from some distance. So yeah, there are different ways you can still improve the market and customer behavior. I totally agree with you.
Well, it makes common sense, doesn't it? If you think about London's example, delivering to 9 or 10,000 collection points or drop-off points is going to be much more efficient than delivering to 3.5 million homes. And if that is equally as convenient, because you don't have to wait in for deliveries or wait for a pickup, and if it still fits and works for you, then you're going to do that. So it's no surprise that where that offer is put on the ground, that the net promoter scores for locker networks, when they do get to that level of proximity and convenience, are sky high. So Amazon, who are the biggest locker network provider in the UK today, they said that their net promoter scores are quote unquote to die for. They are excellent. So they're up at that 70+% mark. And that's just terrific. And that basically says we need more of these and we need to grow our networks. Even though Amazon are the biggest network in the UK, they will grow further. So it's a dynamic space, very much built on a society in the UK, which if you put research out today, they would all say their first choice was delivery at home. And every single survey I've seen for the past 15+ years has said, home delivery is my first option, until people are given a viable alternative option, and then they vote with their feet. And that seems to be the trend that we're seeing in a number of other markets, and I believe that's the trend that we'll see in the UK. The demand that Amazon, that InPost, etc., the first people to put networks together, is very high. But we're looking to go further than them and get right into deep residential, even deeper residential than they have, where they're largely based around private sites, and we're looking at moving into public space as well, but with certain requirements from local authorities to open up that space for locker companies.
So right now, your lockers are servicing only parcel deliveries, last mile and first mile and returns, or you have already also some kind of vertical services like, I don't know, book renting or something like that. You are only in parcel delivery now.
Yes, we're focused on, well, posting, delivering and returns, but very much about providing capacity for others. The whole ethos of the YEEP network is about partnering and collaboration. So we're looking very much to work with the industry to site our capacity in the right places for them and their customers, and for them then to promote our locations to their customers, to their retailers, and for the retailers to share that with their customers. So that's the way we're looking at it. We're not taking the view of, say, an InPost. InPost are very clearly going into direct competition with the carrier networks and the 3PLs. They are looking to buy Menzies. They've just bought the first share in Menzies, one of the national carriers here, and they will complete that purchase over the next 2 years. So they're going end to end. They're looking to take the volume from the existing carriers by going into direct competition. That's a fit with what they're done in the French market, the Polish market, and so on. But it's definitely not where we're going. We're looking to work with the carriers to help them to transition from their current resource-hungry last mile, first mile operations to something more efficient, which works for them, which works for their customers, and which works for the planet.
Yeah, but I think this is a good situation where providers are moving to different directions. It gives customers also variety to choose between different models, and the market is richer, definitely.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's all about creating additional choice and then signposting that and making sure that people are aware of their choices. And I think that there is a need to nudge and to help people to be aware of those things and to move there. I think ultimately, as networks become more sophisticated and more dense, and there's a more complete offer on the ground in the UK, the price differential will start to come through. It's going to be very clear that there is a definite benefit all round to consumer, because by that stage it'll be more convenient, to the carrier because it's more efficient, and certainly more sustainable in the longer term, with less road miles being consumed at that point. That we'll start to increasingly, we're already starting to see it, but we'll increasingly start to see a differential between home delivery and consolidated delivery in one form or another.
Yes, I agree that with that absolutely. But when there is so big competition and everybody is placing up new lockers, then most probably the biggest energy is growing to scouting the new locations and make the arrangements to have them. How about that? Whether there is a big competition to find a good and right spot for your network lockers?
Well, there is, and we'll all have seen some of the horror pictures of multiple lockers in different locations. And we discussed one earlier on, and not far from my house in North London, one site with four major players, all in the same corner of a car park. It looks dreadful. I would like to see a degree of collaboration break out in the UK. I have no doubt in my mind that it is in the end consumers' interest for the industry to work together to create an optimal capacity that is accessible. You can still have competition in there. You can have different suppliers feeding into a defined network. But I do genuinely believe that there is room for a bigger game in the UK, with a number of people who could all potentially benefit from having such a network in place, helping to define it, give it standards, and ensuring its completeness. Because if they basically pooled their resources and pooled their volumes, then they would give a better offer to the end consumer. So that's my vision, if you like, of the end game. I think we're contributing to the solution at this stage, but I think it would go faster and further if it was actually pooled by the industry itself.
This is also true, yes. And sorry. And one prerequisite for that development is definitely also some kind of standardization of data exchange and and intercommunication. And you have been working years for international post corporation, whose job it exactly was to create new standards and products and to roll on. But still, there are not so good and established standards in data exchange in industry. What is your view on that? And I will enlarge the question: what are the bodies who can enforce this kind of standard? Whether this is UPU, IPC, or maybe this should be commercial contracts that will be based the new standards.
It's a really good question, and I think the number of years I spent living in Brussels, traveling the world, and working with all of the top carriers on cross-border solutions was an eye-opener. Yes, there's a role, certainly in international, for bodies like the UPU, who help to bring commonality of standards and services around the world to all sorts of developed and developing environments. But there's also a need, and that's why IPC came about 30 years ago, for some of the developed countries to work together and they saw a need 30 years ago to work together to move faster and further, create standards, and then share those standards with the rest of the world to bring everybody along. And then there's a need for the IPCs to work with the UPUs. So it was an interesting environment because IPC is owned by 24 of the world's leading postal and parcel operators. The board of IPC at any one time is 12 of the CEOs of those companies. So when you're sitting with the CEO of Royal Mail, the CEO of DHL, CEO of the US Postal Service, CEO of La Poste, PostNL, etc. It's a pretty powerful room. And if they all have commonality in certain areas, they're competing, these companies, but they have certain things that they feel are in their common interests. And if you can find that common interest and agree to work together and create a vehicle to deliver that common interest, that's pretty powerful. So 6.5 years I spent doing that, building the IT systems that now operate in 180 countries around the world. The data from all of the flows in and out of those countries, 6 billion plus events a year coming in and out of a common database, and the services that have been built on top of that data to manage performance, to provide customer service, etc., international returns, is very, very powerful. And I think that there's a really good example there that you could actually bring into domestic environments and actually say, well, if you work together, could you create a vehicle, a structure, which you all had an interest in, and you could agree in the outcomes that you would want from that vehicle, and then deliver a capability which allows all of you individually then to transition further and faster. So I've seen that work. I've experienced it working, and I believe that ultimately would be the best way to drive transformational change, genuinely transformational change in the levels of consumption in first and last mile in the United Kingdom. You could still do that, as I say, and still bring in good measures of competition for supply and input and capacity, and use the industry to help deliver your objectives. So, I think you look at all of your experiences in the past and say, well, how can I apply my past experience to today's problem? And in doing that, does that provide a big opportunity? And just because it's difficult doesn't mean you shouldn't try and do it anyway. I think that's the Scot in me. We like to do difficult things, and we don't mind banging our head off the odd brick wall in doing so.
This is great, great to hear, and I can also support that thesis. I'm now also compiling a review of Parcel Locker Network software providers' software review, and for my big surprise, there are a large number of companies who are concentrating on software development, and they are already quite a sophisticated one. So it's not anymore that locker is let's make a metal locker and put the computer in. Now there are very dedicated teams, and they are talking about using AI, how to manage the capacity and optimize the parcel flow and so on. So I see this extremely innovative and interesting field, and I envy you because you are in a very heart of the competition, and I think also innovation that this competition is bringing. So good for you.
It's interesting. Another analogy from past experiences. We used to buy sorting systems as a package of the electromechanical, the actual physical sorting machine, and the OCR inside it that made the decisions around sorting letters and parcels. And that was just pretty crazy. And we had to make a break from that thinking, because the electromechanical system, if you looked after it, could last you 15 or 20 years. But the IT it was on a far faster development track. OCR was developing very, very quickly in the ability to read. This is before AI had even been invented. Things were moving very, very quickly there, and you had to put it onto a different platform and separate it out from the electromechanical. Very, very similar to the locker network, where the physical, the tin that you put on the ground, is one dimension of it, and the smarts that sit behind it are in the IT that drive it, that can manage capacity, especially in an open network. So are you able to pre-allocate space? Are you then able to be flexible with that space when you actually have real volumes heading your direction? And how do you actually evolve that over time? Very interesting analogy there. Certain things aren't new. They're just applied to different challenges, and the technology itself, of course, has moved on. I get approached by, I don't know, 10 plus IT companies a week to say that they can help me. I've got help, and that's great. But it's good to know there's people out there that see this as an opportunity. So there's an awful lot of resource and effort going into optimization of applied technology in logistics. And that can only bring about some really, really good solutions for last mile, first mile over the next few years.
Absolutely agree with you. Listen, Alan, it has been pleasure talking to you. It always has and always will be. But thank you for you to come visit my show and share this information and this really valuable information. I see it the heart of the innovation and competition today. So thank you again, and I wish you good luck for YEEP and yourself.
Well, it's great, and thank you for inviting me. I thoroughly enjoy speaking to anybody with an Estonian background, especially as 80% of all parcels in Estonia are delivered to lockers these days. So there's a good example for the rest of the world.
It is. Thank you, and see you hopefully soon.
Okay, Andre, good to speak to you. Bye now.